Hello everyone, what's up? Welcome to the GMB channel. Hope you will enjoy our video. Before we begin, hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Here is the news title. Starmer's meeting with Trump will be PM's biggest diplomatic test to date. The first time Keir Starmer met Donald Trump, the Prime Minister had a convivial 2-hour dinner with the then presidential candidate in his luxury New York apartment, before Trump dimmed the lights to show off the Manhattan skyline. The stakes at the two leaders' second meeting at the White House this Thursday will be much higher. It will take place days after the third anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, amid tensions at the United Nations, and during a turbulent period in transatlantic relations. Starmer is hoping to ease tensions, officials say, including by avoiding directly referring to the president's attack on Volodymyr Zelensky as a dictator, or his accusation that the Prime Minister and Emmanuel Macron, also in Washington this week, had done nothing to stop the war. Downing Street has, to date, adopted a cautious response to the slew of contentious announcements and comments that have come out of the White House since Trump began his second term. The strategy this week will be no different. We don't want to rile Trump. That would be totally counterproductive both to our interests and those of Ukrainian and European security, one aide said. We're much more interested in what he actually does rather than what he says. So far, we think there's a difference. But No 10 knows the meeting will be the biggest test yet of Starmer's diplomatic and negotiating skills, as he tries to balance the UK's security and economic interests with retaining good relations with the unpredictable president. It could, also, be a game-changer at home. Starmer has always said that personal relationships are his starting point for diplomacy, and his team knows that he will have to play the man, as well as the ball. Will Trump still be saying Keir's a nice guy at the end of it? We don't know that, but we hope he will respect him, an aide said. Key to that, officials believe, will be making sure that at the end of the meeting, Trump feels like he is emerging triumphant. Whether it is on Ukraine or on trade or on China, we will need to convince him that America is getting something out of it, one added. At the Scottish Labour Party conference on Sunday, the Prime Minister said that peace only comes through strength, an echo of the central idea of Trump's America First foreign policy. But in an article last week, he had gone on to warn, the reverse is also true. Weakness leads to war. Downing Street has made clear that Starmer will carry tough messages into his meetings with Trump, insisting that Ukraine must be at the heart of any negotiations with Russia, otherwise any peace deal would fall apart, and that the U.S. should be wary of trusting Putin. He will argue that this is in the U.S.'s interest, with Ukraine's future a decisive issue not just for itself, but for wider European security, as leaving the continent insecure could both strengthen China and damage the U.S. economically. Perhaps aware that Trump's vanity is one of his more reliable traits, Starmer may make the case that a fair outcome would also benefit Trump's own legacy. History would judge any deal which emboldens Putin to be a bad one. Macron is likely to make the same point. In Scotland, Starmer told his party that the U.S. was right to say that NATO allies must do more to ensure their own defense, rather than relying on their largest partner. It's time to take responsibility for our security, he said. He is expected to tell Trump the UK will raise defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030, in line with Labour's election manifesto. But advisors admit the Prime Minister may have to show a willingness to go further, although they downplayed expectations of an announcement this week. Starmer will set out how the UK can offer practical support on defense, including putting boots on the ground in Ukraine for a peacekeeping force. He has already indicated this would be contingent on a U.S. backstop of air, logistics, and communication support. Putin, more than anything right now, appears to want sanctions relief, and the UK will be urging Trump to resist. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, who is expected to accompany Starmer to the White House, is this week announcing the largest sanctions package against Moscow since the early weeks of the war. While Ukraine will inevitably dominate the talks, Starmer will also try to persuade Trump to avoid targeting the UK with tariffs, reminding him the UK runs a trade surplus with the US. The Chagos Islands deal and plans to reconstruct Gaza are also on the table. The UK knows the usual rules of diplomacy, including that such conversations remain private, will not apply. Starmer
Straight
and
after
Trump are
their
likely to
talks.
face a barrage of questions from journalists. Trump, in particular, has a habit of going off script and airing grievances or making unexpected announcements on the spot. This means Starmer will have to be prepared, not only for the formal diplomatic negotiations, but also for managing the optics and public messaging of the meeting. Navigating the Trump factor, unlike his predecessors, Trump has shown a preference for direct, transactional diplomacy. He values personal relationships, but his approach is often unpredictable. Starmer's challenge will be to maintain a strong but amicable presence, ensuring that the UK's interests remain a priority without appearing subservient. One way to do this, aides suggest, is to appeal to Trump's ego by framing agreements as wins for the US, rather than merely mutual benefits. Trump's skepticism toward European security arrangements, including NATO, remains a pressing concern for Downing Street. Starmer is expected to remind Trump that a weakened NATO is not only dangerous for Europe, but could also lead to greater instability that would ultimately hurt American interests. The Ukraine question. Ukraine will be the most contentious issue on the agenda. Trump's past statements have cast doubt on his commitment to supporting Ukraine, and there is speculation that he may try to broker a deal with Russia that would be unfavorable to Kyiv. Starmer will have to walk a fine line between
Emphasizing the necessity of continued support for Ukraine while also acknowledging
Trump's insistence on reducing America's global military burden. Labor officials believe that Trump is open to arguments that frame Ukraine's success as a strategic advantage for the U.S. To this end, Starmer is likely to stress that sustained support for Ukraine will strengthen America's global standing and deter further aggression from rival nations like China. The presence of Foreign Secretary David Lammy will reinforce this argument, as Lammy is expected to highlight the UK's commitment to Ukraine through sanctions and military aid. Trade and economic concerns. Trade will be another focal point of the discussions. Trump has historically been protectionist, advocating for tariffs and trade barriers even with allies. The UK will be keen to secure assurances that it will not be hit with punitive trade measures, particularly on steel and other key exports. Starmer will likely remind Trump that the UK runs a trade surplus with the US, a talking point designed to appeal to the president's economic nationalism. If Trump perceives the UK as a valuable trade partner rather than a competitor, there may be room for negotiation on tariffs and trade deals. Broader geopolitical issues beyond Ukraine and trade, other pressing issues will shape the discussions. The future of the Chagos Islands remains a contentious point between the UK and the US, and the potential reconstruction of Gaza is a matter of global concern. Starmer will attempt to position the UK as a valuable ally in these geopolitical matters, emphasizing Britain's ability to act as a bridge between the US and other world powers. Additionally, China's growing influence in global affairs will likely be a shared concern for both leaders. While Trump has taken a hardline stance on China, Starmer will want to ensure that the UK is aligned with US policy while still maintaining some diplomatic flexibility. Domestic implications for Starmer. While the international stakes of this meeting are high, there are also significant domestic ramifications. How Starmer handles Trump could shape public perception of his leadership abilities. If he is seen as too accommodating, he risks backlash at home for failing to stand up to Trump's more controversial positions. Conversely, if he is too combative, he may damage UK-US relations and hurt Britain's strategic interests. Starmer's team is aware that their handling of Trump could influence his standing in the polls, particularly among voters who favor a strong UK-US relationship. A successful meeting, where Starmer appears firm yet diplomatic, could bolster his credentials as a capable leader on the world stage. The press conference and aftermath. Following their discussions, both leaders will likely hold a joint press conference. This moment could be a defining one for Starmer, as he will have to navigate Trump's often unpredictable behavior while maintaining a message of stability and strength. Aides are preparing for a range of possible outcomes, from Trump unexpectedly offering concessions to making statements that could create diplomatic headaches for the UK. Regardless of what happens, Starmer's ability to stay composed and diplomatic will be crucial. So what do you guys think about this update? Let me know in the comment below. If you like my video, please press like button and subscribe for more. Hope I'll see you in next video.